Wheelchairs should stay at home, not bother others. The man's voice sliced through the diner like a knife. Then one of them suddenly pushed her wheelchair, causing her to crash to the floor, belongings scattering everywhere. But 30 minutes later, a military Humvee screeched to a halt outside. 3 Marines walked in. No one said a word, but their piercing gazes silenced the entire place instantly. Have you ever witnessed humiliation turned into honor? Comment respect if you believe honor always finds its way back. Linda Rowe sat quietly in her usual corner of Montana's welcome home diner, her scarred hands folded neatly in her lap. At 48, the former Marine Staff Sergeant carried battle wounds, both visible and invisible. An IED in Afghanistan had stolen her left leg, but the deeper scars remained hidden behind eyes that had seen too much death. The golden afternoon light streamed through dusty windows, painting long shadows across the worn floor. Linda adjusted her prosthetic leg beneath her faded jeans, grimacing at the phantom pain that haunted her daily. Despite everything, she worked part-time at the diner, clinging to the routine that kept the darkness at bay. She cherished these quiet moments between rushes when the diner fell into peaceful stillness. The owner, Mike, had hired her without hesitation, just a firm handshake from one veteran to another. No questions about her missing leg, no pity in his eyes, just respect. The peaceful silence shattered when the bell above the door jangled harshly. 4 men stormed in, reeking of whiskey and entitlement, their voices unnecessarily loud. Linda's spine stiffened instinctively. She recognized their ringleader, Jack Winters, a dishonorably discharged army private who'd built a reputation for tormenting anyone he deemed weaker. "Well, look what we have here," Jack announced, elbowing his buddies. As he spotted Linda, "It's the half-soldier on wheels." Linda kept her eyes down, methodically folding napkins for the dinner service. 18 years of military discipline had taught her when battles were worth fighting. This wasn't one of them. "Didn't think they'd let cripples handle food," Jack continued, his voice deliberately carrying across the diner. "Pretty sure that's against health codes." The scattered patrons shifted uncomfortably but remained silent. The young waitress behind the counter shot Linda a concerned glance before suddenly becoming intensely interested in wiping spotless countertops. Linda wheeled herself to a nearby table, collecting empty coffee cups with practiced efficiency. "Can I get you gentlemen menus?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tension coiling through her body. Jack sprawled across the booth, legs spread wide, taking more space than necessary. "Sure thing, Wheels, roll it over quick." His friends snickered on cue. As Linda turned away, Jack's voice dropped to a theatrical whisper meant for all to hear. "How'd a woman even get into the Marines? Some diversity quota." Linda's knuckles whitened on her wheelchair grips, but she continued without acknowledging him. Combat had taught her to identify threats worth engaging. "I served with females, Jack." Continued, voice rising with each word. "Dead weight. All of them. Women like you are why our military's gone soft." Linda returned with menus, placing them precisely on the table. "Today's special is meatloaf," she said evenly. Jack's hand shot out, gripping her wrist hard enough to bruise. The eagle, globe, an anchor tattoo on her forearm was visible beneath her rolled sleeve. "So you really were a jarhead? Let me guess. Office duty, filing papers while real soldiers fought. Remove your hand," Linda said, steel beneath her quiet tone. "Or what? You'll run me over." Jack laughed, releasing her with a dismissive shove. "Women like you are why America can't win wars anymore. Playing soldier until it gets rough, then coming home for special treatment." Linda measured her breathing like she'd been trained. "Inhale 4 counts, hold, exhale. I'll give you time with the menus." As she pivoted her wheelchair, Jack suddenly thrust his boot forward, blocking her wheel. "Did I dismiss you, Marine? Stand at attention when I'm talking." Linda maneuvered around. "The obstruction with practice skill. Your server will be with you shortly. Wheelchair warriors should stay home," Jack called after her. "If you can't stand on your own 2 feet, don't make it everyone else's problem." His friends erupted in cruel laughter that echoed off the walls. One of them, a heavy-set man with a patchy beard, lurched to his feet and approached Linda from behind. "We're talking to you, soldier girl," he slurred, grabbing the handles of her wheelchair without permission. Before Linda could react, he violently shoved the chair forward. The wheelchair hit a table edge and tipped, launching Linda onto the hard floor. Hot coffee from a nearby table splashed across her clothes, and her prosthetic leg twisted painfully beneath her. The diner froze in horrified silence. No one moved, no one helped. Only the sound of Jack and his friends' laughter filled the space, punctuated by the hiss of Linda's sharp intake of breath. Linda lay there, feeling the cold floor against her palms, the scalding coffee soaking through her clothes, and the crushing weight of public humiliation pressing down on her chest. For the first time since Afghanistan, she felt completely vulnerable. The silence in the diner hung thick and heavy, broken only by Jack's table's occasional snorts of laughter. Linda's personal items lay scattered across the floor. Her worn leather wallet, a carefully folded handkerchief, and a faded photograph that had slipped from her pocket. The image, edges soft from constant handling, showed Linda standing proudly in her dress blues, surrounded by her Marine unit before the Edie changed everything. With mechanical precision born from years of adapting, Linda pulled herself upright, her upper body powerful from years of compensating for her missing limb. She reached for her overturned wheelchair, righting it with a grunt that betrayed the effort it cost her. Nobody moved to help. Several patrons averted their eyes, suddenly fascinated by the tabletops or the dregs in their coffee cups. Others whispered behind raised hands, "Someone should do something. Not our business." So uncomfortable to watch. Linda's face remained a disciplined mask, betraying nothing. Every Marine learns that showing weakness can be fatal. She gathered her belongings systematically, each movement deliberate, despite the coffee burning against her skin through soaked denim. Her faded Marine Corps jacket, the one she rarely went without, bore a small Corps emblem on the breast pocket, nearly worn away from years of washing, but still visible to those who recognized its significance. From behind the counter, Melissa, a newly hired waitress barely out of high school, started forward with clean towels. The manager, Dave, quickly intercepted her, grabbing her elbow. "Don't," he muttered under his breath. "They're paying customers. We don't need trouble." "But she works here," Melissa protested quietly, confusion etched across her young face. "Part-time only," Dave replied, voice low but firm. "Those guys come in every week, big spenders when they're happy. Just take their drink orders and keep it moving." Linda finally settled back into her wheelchair, dignity intact, but shoulders rigidly set. She wheeled herself back to her corner table without ordering another coffee to replace the one now staining her clothes. She sat motionless, one hand unconsciously drifting to her chest where service medals once hung. At a nearby table, a young boy around 8 years old watched the scene with wide, troubled eyes. He sat with his parents, his father wearing a Veterans Association jacket adorned with Desert Storm patches and ribbons. "Dad," the boy whispered, tugging his father's sleeve. "Is that lady a soldier too, like you were?" The father studied Linda. For a long moment, his expression transforming as he noticed the Marine Corps emblem on her jacket. His jaw tightened visibly as he glanced from Linda to Jack's table of laughing men. "Yes, Tommy," he finally answered, voice thick, and from the looks of it, a real one. He stood abruptly, phone already in hand. "Excuse me," he told his wife, "I need to make a call." As he strode purposefully toward the door, phone pressed to his ear, his voice carried back into the diner. "Hey, it's Lieutenant Crawford. Listen, I need to report something to the old unit. You're not going to believe what I just witnessed." Inside, Linda remained motionless, her mechanical hand gently adjusting her frayed sleeve, her 1,000-yard stare fixed on the window, where late afternoon light illuminated the diner's weathered Sign, "Welcome home, diner of the brave." Jack's voice rose again from across the room. "Hey, half-soldier, my coffee is getting cold. Don't they teach you to serve in the Marines?" Linda didn't flinch. She didn't need to respond. The diner's door was already swinging open. Exactly 30 minutes after Linda hit the floor, the unmistakable growl of a military Humvee engine cut through the diner's uncomfortable murmur. The massive vehicle, painted in desert tan with Marine Corps insignia clearly visible, pulled up directly in front of the entrance, tires crunching aggressively on gravel. The diner door swung open with military precision. 3 Marines entered in perfect formation, 2 men and 1 woman, all wearing impeccable service uniforms that gleamed under the fluorescent lights. The first, a barrel-chested master sergeant, with steel-grey hair, cropped regulation short, walked with a slight limp and carried a polished oak cane. Behind him came a younger Marine pushing an empty wheelchair. The third was a female captain whose uniform displayed combat ribbons and medals that silently testified to multiple tours in the world's most dangerous places. They didn't utter a single word. They didn't need to. Their presence commanded immediate attention, and a heavy silence blanketed the diner as they moved with synchronized purpose directly to Linda's corner table. The master sergeant stopped before Linda, drew himself to perfect attention despite his injured leg, and delivered a textbook. "Salute. Staff Sergeant Rowe, forgive our delayed response, ma'am." Linda's military training took over instinctively. She straightened in her wheelchair, shoulders squaring as her hand rose in a crisp return salute. The defeated look in her eyes vanished, replaced by a spark of something long dormant. "At ease, Master Sergeant Wilson," she replied, her voice stronger and more commanding than anyone in the diner had ever heard from her. Melissa, the young waitress, hurried over, nervously smoothing her apron. Should I clean the table for you all?" The female captain nodded once. "4 coffees, please, Black." At Jack's table, the laughter had died. The men shifted uncomfortably, suddenly fascinated by their drink glasses. Master Sergeant Wilson spoke to Linda without lowering his voice, ensuring every word carried throughout the now silent diner. "Lieutenant Crawford contacted us, said one of our finest was being disrespected on civilian ground." The captain's calculating gaze swept the diner, lingering momentarily on Jack and his companions. The lieutenant specifically mentioned individuals who physically assaulted a decorated combat veteran in a wheelchair. "It's nothing," Linda murmured, though she straightened her prosthetic leg beneath the table. "With respect, Staff Sergeant," Wilson replied firmly, "it is not nothing. Nobody pushes one of ours, not in combat, not in civilian territory." The younger Marine cleared his throat. "Staff Sergeant Rowe led our unit through Kandahar when everything went sideways, saved my life and 4 others when our convoy hit that IED cluster." Linda's eyes flashed with recognition. "Corporal Jenkins, you were barely 20. Still green, ma'am," he smiled tightly, "but I never forgot what you taught us. Marines move as one or not at all." Throughout the diner, something remarkable began happening. An elderly man, wearing a Korean War veteran cap, slowly rose to his feet, standing at attention. A middle-aged woman with an Air Force pin on her jacket stood from a back table. 3 National Guard members in civilian clothes rose in silent solidarity. Lieutenant Crawford, the boy's father, returned from outside and called out a single command: "Attention." Nearly half the diner's patrons stood, backs straight and shoulders squared in respect. Linda's eyes widened in surprise. At Jack's table, the uncomfortable silence deepened. The man who had pushed Linda's wheelchair seemed to shrink in his seat. Jack stared into his coffee. Earlier bravado evaporated like morning dew. Master Sergeant Wilson turned his steely gaze toward their table. "The Corps teaches us to fight with honor, to protect those who cannot protect themselves, to never, under any circumstances, leave a Marine behind." His voice, carried without shouting, weighted with authority earned through decades of service. Some wear the uniform but never truly understand what it means to serve. The captain placed a hand on Linda's shoulder. Staff Sergeant Rowe lost her. Leg-pulling 3 Afghan children from a burning vehicle after an IED strike. Earned the Bronze Star with valor. 23 years of distinguished service to her country. Linda shook her head slightly. That's enough, Captain. That life is behind me. With respect, Staff Sergeant, the captain replied, the Corps is never behind you. Semper Fidelis isn't just a motto. Dave, the manager, approached their table, earlier indifference replaced with nervous deference. Your meals are on the house today for all of you. Master Sergeant Wilson met his gaze evenly. Marines pay our debt, sir. Always have, always will. The meal that followed was subdued, but dignified. Linda sat tall in her wheelchair, surrounded by her fellow Marines, occasionally sharing a small smile or nod at some memory only they understood. Around them, the diner slowly returned to normal activity, though many patrons stopped by their table to offer quiet thanks for their service. Jack and his friends paid their bill in silence and left without making eye contact with anyone. As they departed, Corporal Jenkins called after them, "Semper Fi, gentlemen," his tone making it clear the phrase was both a greeting and a warning. As evening shadows lengthened, Linda spoke more than she had in months. With her comrades beside her, memories surfaced, both painful and proud. She described Afghanistan's mountains at dawn, the camaraderie of shared missions, the vigilance that becomes second nature in war zones. Remember Helmand Province? Master Sergeant Wilson chuckled. When that sandstorm hit and you navigated us back to base using just stars and pure stubbornness. Linda's lips curved slightly. Anyone would have done the same. No, the captain interrupted firmly. Not anyone. That's why you earned those stripes. As closing time approached, the Marines prepared to leave. The Master Sergeant placed a business card on the table with a phone number handwritten on the back. Next time, he said quietly, you call us directly. No Marine stands alone, ever. 1 week later, the Welcome Home diner unveiled its new sign. The weathered old board had been replaced with a freshly painted display reading, Diner of the Brave. Every soldier has a place here. Inside, the transformation was subtle but profound. Photographs of local veterans now lined one wall, their service branches and years proudly displayed beneath each image. At Linda's corner table, a small brass plaque had been permanently affixed, reserved for veterans. Linda still arrived for her regular shifts, still folded napkins, and served coffee with quiet efficiency. But now she wore her Marine Corps pin openly on her collar, and her wheelchair displayed a small Corps flag attached to the back. The booth where Jack and his friends had sat remained conspicuously empty. Regular customers seemed to avoid it through unspoken agreement. Instead, veterans of all ages gravitated toward tables near Linda's corner, offering respectful nods without intruding on her space. Lieutenant Crawford and his family became Saturday regulars. His son Tommy often brought hand-drawn pictures for Linda, crayon figures in uniform standing beside a smiling stick figure in a wheelchair, all beneath a brightly colored sun. "Is this supposed to be me?" Linda asked one morning, studying the colorful artwork. Tommy nodded seriously. "Dad says you're a hero. Heroes should smile more." Linda's lips curved into what might have been her first genuine smile in years. "Your dad sounds like a wise man. He says, what you do matters more than what you say, Tommy," replied, repeating his father's lesson. And that real strength isn't about having two good legs. In the parking lot, a desert-tan Humvee now appeared regularly every Thursday evening. Master Sergeant Wilson, Captain Rodriguez, and Corporal Jenkins would arrive precisely at 1800 hours for their weekly meal with Linda. They never discussed what had happened that first day. They didn't need to. Instead, they shared coffee and memories, occasionally falling into the comfortable silence of those who have faced death together and emerged forever changed but unbroken. The diner itself had subtly transformed. What was once just another roadside eatery had become something more, neutral ground where the military-civilian divide narrowed over cups of coffee and shared meals. Veterans who had previously kept to themselves now found camaraderie in a corner, a booth. Civilians who had never served learned to recognize the quiet signs of sacrifice in the people they passed daily. Dave, the manager, who had once prioritized paying customers over basic decency, now greeted each veteran personally. He'd replaced his casual attire with pressed shirts and a tie with a small American flag pin on his lapel. The changes weren't just cosmetic. He'd hired 2 more veterans as staff members and established a monthly dinner where local service members ate for free. Melissa, the young waitress, had asked Linda to teach her about military rank structure and protocol. She now recognized different service insignias and understood which questions were appropriate to ask returning soldiers and which subjects to respectfully avoid. One evening, as Linda's Thursday dinner with her fellow Marines concluded, a young man in a crisp new army uniform entered the diner. He stood hesitantly just inside the door, clutching his cap, clearly a stranger to the town. Linda wheeled over to him. "First deployment?" she asked quietly. He nodded, visible relief washing over his face at being acknowledged. "Ship out tomorrow morning, ma'am." Linda gestured to the empty chair at their table. "Join us. Coffee is decent and the company's better. I wouldn't want to intrude on your—" "You're not intruding, soldier," she interrupted gently. "You're continuing a tradition." As the young recruit settled at their table, Master Sergeant Wilson raised his coffee cup in a silent toast. Around the diner, other veterans, identified by their caps, pins, or simply by the way they carried themselves, raised their cups in response. No words were exchanged, but none were needed. The gesture conveyed everything. You are seen. You are one of us. You will never stand alone. The town itself seemed to have changed. Linda had been invited to speak at the local high school about her service, and after years of silence, she found herself sharing stories with teenagers, not of combat or injury, but of discipline, purpose, and the unbreakable bonds formed under pressure. "The uniform isn't what makes you a Marine," she told them. "It's standing tall when it would be easier to crumble. It's carrying weight for someone who can't bear it alone. It's remembering that your actions reflect not just on you, but on everyone who stands beside you." Local business owners began offering military discounts they'd never considered before. The town council approved funds for a small veterans memorial in the park. A weekly support group for returning service members started meeting in the community center. 6 months after that fateful day, a reporter from a regional newspaper visited to write about the diner's transformation into an unofficial veterans hub. Linda reluctantly agreed to an interview, but refused to discuss the incident that started it all. "Some battles aren't worth remembering," she said simply. "Focus on what came after." What came after was a community transformed by the ripple effects of both cruelty and kindness, a powerful reminder that indifference enables hatred while solidarity builds strength. Jack Winters never returned to the diner. Rumors circulated that he'd moved to another town after losing his job, something about conduct unbecoming when his employer discovered what had happened. Linda never asked about him. She had more important things to focus on, like the young female army recruit who sought her out for advice before shipping to basic training, or the Vietnam veteran who finally found the courage to wear his service medals again after decades of keeping them hidden in a drawer. Outside, golden sunlight bathed the Montana mountains as evening approached. Long shadows stretched across the diner's parking lot, where the old Humvee waited patiently. A handwritten note remained taped to its windshield. "We always come back for those who never quit." As darkness fell, the diner's windows glowed warmly, illuminating the diverse faces gathered within. young recruits facing uncertain futures, aging veterans with stories etched in their weathered faces, and Linda, sitting tall in her wheelchair, finally home in a world that had once seemed determined to push her aside. The brass plaque on her table caught the light, its simple message reflecting a profound truth. In this place, at least, no one would be forgotten. No one would stand alone. Every soldier had an honored place at the table, wheelchair or not. The greatest battles, Linda had learned, weren't always fought on foreign soil. Sometimes they happened in small-town diners where the weapons were words, and the victory came not from defeating enemies, but from standing firm in who you are, even when the world tries to knock you down. Not everyone who wears a uniform understands the word honor, but those who maintain their dignity when humiliated, they are the ones worthy of our deepest respect. I never want anyone to be left behind. Everyone deserves to be heard and respected. If you believe that too, please comment respect to show you stand for kindness and justice. Don't forget to subscribe to spread more stories that touch the heart.